Uncovered in 1939, the sinister spacecraft from Earth's future that haunts Antarctica forever. The nights in Maplewood were never meant to be unsettling. Yet, for Clara, whispers of dread seeped through the walls of her modest home, murky shadows cracked by an ominous, low humming that rattled her dreams into nightmares. Each sound felt like a warning, vibrating through her bones and urging her to heed the chaos beyond her peaceful suburban existence. Just stress, she murmured, but there was something deeper, a terror curling around her heart, squeezing tighter every night. Outside, the park lights flickered, a strange dance against the dark. Children were often found in groups, but recently, they'd vanished into shadow, suspects in a sinister play. It wasn't until Ethan came home with that vacant look, the kind that sparked panic and confusion, that Clara felt reality twist into something grotesque. He whispered of figures in the trees, phantoms just beyond her vision. Her heart raced. What was happening to her boy? Panic clawed at her as she sorted through clutter in the attic, disturbed by haunting memories. Her fingers brushed against a dust-covered box. Old newspapers spilled out, yellowed pages crinkling under her touch. One headline screamed at her. Mysterious craft found in Antarctica, research facility sealed off. A chill shot down her spine. Her grandfather's stories echoed in her mind, terrifying tales of World War II and hushed warnings about dark powers lying beneath the icy grip of Antarctica. Clara confronted her neighbors the next day, but their eyes darted away, smiles brittle. Ellen from next door, who often shared recipes over coffee, now wore a mask of fear, eyes wide as if a storm sat just below her skin. Kids, just kids making noise, the sheriff scoffed, shoving his hat down over his eyes. Dismissive. It stung, deepening Clara's trepidation. What if no one believed her? What if the worst was happening right under their noses? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The strange tensions grew, rumors thick as fog. Clara turned to the local historian, Jason, lurking in the outer circles of town events. His wide eyes darted around like a deer caught in the headlights. When she pressed him about the clippings, his temper flared. Stay away from the past, he warned. Some stories shouldn't be told. Her mind raced, unearthing secrets, fraying the edges of her sanity. One fateful night, awakening from a horror-laden sleep, she found Ethan outside at midnight, ethereal moonlight painting his silhouette bizarrely. He stood rigid, entranced, clutching a glowing object. The air hummed thunderously now, trembling around them. It calls to me, Mom, he uttered, a mix of awe and terror. The trees around them seemed to pulse with dark energy, shadows spiraling, the park lights swirling violently above a swirling vortex that blurred the boundary between reality and nightmare. Clara's heart thundered, chills coursing through her veins. The voices of mothers echoed in her mind. What if she lost him to the darkness now threatening to engulf them? She stepped forward, but a fear gripped her. What force lingered in the night? What ancient horror had unleashed itself upon her family? Clutching her son tighter, she felt the ground quake beneath their feet, the air thick with threats undone by realization. Their fight wasn't just for survival but to protect the very fabric of their lives from an unknown terror ready to erupt. A howl shattered the night, rising from the treetops like an ancient beast awakened from slumber. Clara pressed Ethan against her, heart racing, the glowing object in his hands flashing with a pulsating light that seemed to mock her. Shadows writhed, darting between the trees, elongating grotesquely as if reaching for them with clawed fingers. Mom, we have to go to it, Ethan urged, his wide eyes sparkling unnaturally. Something shifted in his voice, warped by the power of whatever he held. It sent a chill down her spine, replacing the maternal instinct to protect with a primal urge to flee. It wants us. No! She gasped, yanking the object from his grip. The moment she touched it, a jolt surged through her, searing her skin and racing through her mind a terrible knowledge, a glimpse of an unfathomable reality. Images flooded her thoughts, desolate landscapes of ice, twisted figures in the dark, whispers of voices in distress. It felt alive, a parasite feasting on her fears. Ethan's scream cut through her reverie. He clawed at her arm, panic painting his face. "Mom! Don't let it take me!" The woods seemed to close in, the park lights flickering violently as if caught in a violent struggle against the encroaching shadows. Heart pounding against her ribs, Clara tossed the object away, a desperate act that felt like undoing her own sanity. When it hit the ground, the light dimmed, forcing the shadows to recede. Silence clung to the air, thick with the promise of dread, but something shifted. A low, throaty growl echoed through the night, and the darkness lingered, swirling with malevolence. "Why did you do that?" Ethan cried, eyes wide with fear and confusion. The innocence drained from him, replaced with something darker, something that felt as if it had brushed against the edges of madness. "Ethan, listen to me." Clara's voice trembled, fighting to be heard over the impending chaos. "We need to get home. Now!" They turned to flee, but the air thickened, wrapping around them like a vice. A figure emerged from the shadows, gliding towards them. Clara's breath hitched as desperation clawed at her throat. It stood tall, unnaturally slender, its features obscured by darkness. She felt its gaze penetrating, searching, a coldness that threatened to blanket her with despair. This was not the same fear she bore for her son, it was deeper, more profound, a realization that she was now prey. "Clara!" Ethan, the voice slithered through the air, stretched and warped, almost familiar yet terribly wrong. "You have disturbed forces that belonged to another time." The ground trembled again, laughter echoed through the trees, disjointed and unhinged, sending shivers coursing down her spine. Clara's feet moved of their own accord as the darkness closed in, an undeniable instinct to survive. In a frantic bid, she grabbed Ethan's hand, pulling him toward the park exit. "Run!" she screamed, despite the doubt gnawing at her. Would they outrun whatever was stalking them? Whatever had decided now was the time to reveal its monstrous nature? As they dashed into the street, Clara dared to glance back. The figure wavered, flickering like a dying light bulb, but its gaze lingered, a promise of torment. And then, just like that, it vanished back into the shadows, leaving a chilling echo behind. Panting, they stumbled into their home, slamming the door shut, but the feeling of safety was short-lived. A soft knock reverberated through the silence, deliberate and maddening, as if the darkness had found a way in after all. "Mom?" Ethan whispered, stifling a whimper. "It's coming." Clara's heart sank. The very thing she wanted to protect him from was now threatening to seep through their defenses. She knew then that the fight was far from over. What had they awoken? And could they ever escape it? She had only just begun to uncover the truth. The knock persisted, a rhythmic taunt against the fragile walls they retreated behind. Clara froze, dread wrapping around her throat like a noose. The air felt heavier, thick with an oppressive darkness that dared her to breathe. Each second stretched, echoing her heartbeat until it pounded in her ears. "Mom!" Ethan whispered again, his small frame trembling beside her, innocence eroding as panic took hold. She gripped his shoulder tightly, fighting the urge to scream. Instead, she stepped toward the door, heart racing with every cautious movement. "Stay back, Ethan," she urged, her voice barely a whisper. Cautiously, she approached the door, hand trembling over the doorknob. Each knock whispered promises of terror, sent shivers crawling up her spine. "Open up, Clara!" The voice was low, deep, stirring something dark within her. It wasn't he, the stranger in the shadows. It felt like an echo, a familiar distortion of the life she once knew. "You have things that belong to me." "No," she cried, twisting the knob, her pulse quickening. They were safe inside, weren't they? But the darkness knew them, knew her deepest fears, and was not prepared to relent. The knocking ceased. Silence descended, cold and cloying. Clara held her breath, straining to hear a breath, a sound that might give her some indication of their fate. But all she could hear was Ethan's shallow breathing, tinged with fear. And then scratches. They came slowly, deliberate and careful, as if something was testing the integrity of their small fortress. Clara's chest tightened. She felt the walls resonate with those agonizing sounds, the 0 hour approaching with each unsettling scrape. "Mom!" Ethan whimpered, pulling at her, but dread kept her rooted. Her mind flitted, grasping for a plan, a glimmer of hope that might save them. "Mom! Should we need to be quiet?" Clara hissed, crouching low, her heart beating in her throat. She spotted the tattered curtains, a ready shield from the encroaching darkness. "Clara, open the door for me." The voice was closer now, seeping through the cracks, wrapping around the fabric of their safety. "I can help you help." The word hung in the air, oily and foul. It felt wrong. Eerie laughter echoed beyond the door, bouncing off the walls of her mind, clawing through her sanity. Ethan moved beside her, his wide eyes mirroring her own terror. "What if it really does want to help?" he whispered, losing himself in the darkness. But Clara had learned something terrible on their escapade. Help always came with a price. "No, Ethan." Clara shook her head, clutching the child closer. "We can't trust." The door rattled violently, slamming against the frame as the bolted lock squealed in protest. Clara's heart lunged, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Get down!" she shouted, pushing Ethan beneath the table. She crouched beside him, feeling the weight of their world pressing down. Just as the door shattered with a devastating crash, a figure surged into the room, cloaked in shadows and malice. A silhouette of twisted limbs and an eye that reflected despair. The dark laughed, spilling malevolence as it reveled in their fear. "Now, Clara, what will it be?" it asked, voice a chilling caress, dripping with sickly sweet temptation. "Do you submit, or do you dare to fight?" The choice hung in the air, a terrible ultimatum. Clara's mind raced, thoughts imploding, the weight of responsibility pressing down heavier than ever. She had a choice to make. Before she could think, before she could answer, Ethan slipped out from under the table, a raw determination shining in his eyes. "No!" he cried out, stepping toward the thing that loomed before them. "You want to take my mom?" Clara's blood ran cold. She gripped the table, heart pounding, knowing the dangers of the unknown, recognizing that they were standing at the edge of a precipice, but the darkness beckoned and they were about to cross. What awaited them on the other side? Clara didn't know if they would survive, but one thing was certain: they had awakened something far beyond their understanding, and it was hungry for more than just fear. It hungered for a choice, one that would change everything. Ethan's defiance hung in the air, challenging the shadows that clawed at the edges of their sanity. The thing before them pulsed with intrigue and malice, its form shifting, more felt than seen, like smoke writhing in a gust. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. "Ethan, get back!" she hissed, panic sharp in her voice. But the child stood firm, fists clenched, a spark igniting where once there had been only fear. "Brave little warrior," the darkness mocked, its voice a fusion of sweetness and venom. "But bravery means nothing when faced with an unyielding fate." Clara's thoughts raced. She was a mother first, protector above all. "Don't listen to it, Ethan! Come back!" Tears threatened to spill from her eyes. But Ethan stepped forward, small but fierce. "You don't scare me." His voice trembled, but resolve solidified his stance. The figure twisted, an amorphous shape swirling like a nightmare, mocking Ethan's bravery. It extended a disjointed limb toward him, tendrils of shadow curling in the air. "Shall I show him, Clara? Shall I teach him what it means to bow?" it hissed, delighting in the tension. "No!" Clara screamed, lunging forward. She grasped Ethan's arm, yanking him back just as the shadow lunged, missing them by inches. A memory flared to life, a time before the darkness, when laughter filled the air and sunlight flooded their home. A protective fire burned in her chest, igniting her survival instinct. "Let us fight it together," she urged, gripping Ethan tightly. His eyes widened in shock, then resolved. The room felt smaller, the walls pulsating with the pressure of dread. The figure hissed silently, frustration woven into its very being. "You think you can fight me? Your past haunts you. I've come to collect the debts of your choices. Whatever you want, you can have it, Clara shouted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She picked up a nearby lamp, its brass base heavy and cold against her palms. She vaulted back, positioning herself protectively in front of Ethan, determined. The thing hissed again, a sound that could only be described as the mingling of 1,000 voices in agony. You will regret defiance, Clara. They say one must face their past, else they become ensnared in its chains. A vision flashed in her mind, her life spiraling out of control after the divorce, every decision lining the path that brought them to this moment. Guilt and shame surged. Was she really to blame? But the darkness didn't wait for her deliberation. It lunged again, tendrils of shadow stretching, closing like a net. Clara swung the lamp, breaking the encroaching darkness, smashing the shade from the table. Light burst forth, illuminating corners that thrived in the absence of it. Gasps of surprise echoed around the room, like whispers retreating. Disregarding your decisions only strengthens my resolve, it whispered, the voice laced with malice but wavering slightly, as if uncertain. Clara's breath caught. The walls began to crumble around them, shadows retreating. Ethan! She yelled. We need to focus. Stay close. In their onslaught of fear and confusion, Clara realized they could wield the light. It was a weapon against the creeping evil. Together, she breathed, extending her free hand toward the darkness. The thing recoiled, revealing hints of humanity amid its warped edges. You know not what you awaken. Are you prepared for the consequences of uncovering your past? What are you? Ethan shouted, emboldened by the light. I am what you fear most, the shadow of your choices. A split second of realization struck Clara, sharp as a knife. If this entity fed on their guilt, their flaws, they had to expose their hearts to banish it. We face you together, she declared, clutching Ethan's hand. As they joined forces, the lamp flared, casting golden light that pushed back the shadows, igniting strengths only they could see. We're not afraid anymore. Not of you, they shouted, voices resonating with conviction, drowning the darkness in unity. But the retreating figure twisted in agony, a chilling laughter rising as it faded into the corners of the room, leaving a palpable aura of dread. This is not over, Clara. With a mighty shudder, the figure dissolved, but they knew it was just a temporary victory. A hum of unease lingered, hinting of what was still to come. Mom, what will happen now? Ethan whispered, his grip tightening as the world around them grew quiet, oppressive. Clara looked down, where fear had once laid claim, now a spark of hope flickered. But they knew the darkness lingered beyond the edges of their light, waiting patiently for their next choice. What awaited them next? Would light truly banish the shadows, or was this merely the beginning of a deeper terror? Clara held Ethan's hand tightly, their breaths mingling in the charged silence. The remnants of the creature's laughter echoed in her mind, sharp and taunting. The air felt heavy, darkened by anticipation, as if unseen eyes watched and waited just beyond the light's reach. Let us go, she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil churning inside. The two edged backward toward the exit, heartbeats syncopating with the silence that suffocated the room. Shadows skittered along the walls, whispering secrets as they coiled back into familiar corners. Outside the door, the hallway yawned before them, long and dark, lit by flickering overhead bulbs that buzzed like angry bees. Each step felt weighted, each sound magnified. Clara's heart drummed against her ribs. We can't let it find us, Ethan whispered, his small frame pressed against her side. She felt the tremor in his voice, the fear that began to shadow her own resolve. Clenching her teeth, she shoved the door wide and marched out. The hallway twisted into a dim labyrinth. Desperate breaths bounced off the walls. They made their way slowly, cautiously, the air seeming to thicken with every step they took. It was as if the darkness itself pushed back against them, urging them to falter, to lose faith. Mom? Ethan's voice was barely audible. Do you think it's really gone? I don't know, sweetie. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, casting jagged shadows that danced and flickered, twisting grotesquely across the walls until the flicker stopped altogether. plunging them into blackness. Clara's stomach dropped as the silence shattered like glass. "Clara?" She heard the creature's voice, a cruel mockery of warmth, slithering through the void. "You think escaping will save you? You cannot run from your past." A clawing fear gripped her heart as she turned to Ethan. "Close your eyes," she warned, feeling the cold seep into her skin. "Don't look. Stay with me." Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, but his grip trembled, uncertainty rippling through their connection. Clara's breath came in shallow gasps, but she couldn't leave him. She had to shield him from the shadows that lashed and curled around them, like snakes ready to strike. The darkness coiled, thick and suffocating. With every heartbeat, doubts sprouted in her mind. What could they do? They were unarmed. And yet she remembered the lamp, the light that pushed back the darkness. "Ethan, we need to find something to shine," she murmured, her voice trembling but determined. "Anything." "No," he whimpered, but Clara's mind raced with possibilities. Then her eyes caught a glimmer near the ground, broken glass fragments scattered like diamonds, remnants of what had once been a window. She bent quickly, searching through the debris, until her fingers brushed against a shard, slick and sharp. "This will work." With urgency, she held it up as if it could scrape away the shadows. "Mom, it's not going to be enough," Ethan's voice cracked with fear. But Clara felt the shard pulse with energy, a connection to her resolve igniting. "Yes, it will. Focus on the light. Remember what we did before together." She raised the shard high. Somewhere within her, the power of their unity surged a beacon in the dark. "We can do this. We won't let you take us." But from the depths of the surrounding shadows, the creature screeched with 100 agonized voices, the air vibrating with its rage. "You cannot escape your own darkness. I'll be back." As Clara turned the shard towards the sound, a beam sliced through the dark, illuminating a momentary path. The screeches receded, echoing into the void. But the shadows pressed closer, crawling against her skin, whispering temptations of despair. "Come on, Ethan!" she yelled, her voice pushing through the haunting whispers. His eyes sprang open, a glimmer of fierce determination taking shape. With wide steps, they raced forward, the fragment of light guiding them momentarily. The corridor stretched endlessly, the ground trembling beneath their feet. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling. They could still be hunted. As they barreled forward, the darkness stirred, emerging like a throbbing wound, ready to pounce. "You will be marked by your fear, and I will find you again." Ethan stumbled, and Clara scooped him up, running faster. "Trust me. We'll make it, just keep running." But the shadows leaped and lunged, and as her pulse quickened, Clara realized hope and terror collided. She had fought before, but would it be enough this time? What lurked just beyond the light? Would it attack again, stronger and hungrier than before? The thought sent a shudder through her spine as they raced into the unknown, darkness chasing them with relentless intent. They sprinted down the corridor, the shard casting a feeble glow, just enough to shield them from the encroaching darkness. Each heartbeat echoed in Clara's ears like a drum, drowning out the ghostly whimpers and echoing threats that lingered just a breath away. But the light was flickering, the jagged edges of the shard demanding more energy than she had to give. "Faster!" Clara urged, tightening her grip on Ethan, who breathed heavily against her shoulder. The weight of their fear hung between them, a palpable reminder of the danger that lurked in the shadows. Just a bit longer. They reached a door at the end of the hall, its surface splintered and age-worn. Clara yanked it open, and they tumbled inside, slamming it shut behind them. The room was a storage area, boxes piled haphazardly, a few stark overhead bulbs swinging from chains, illuminating a dusty, forgotten space. "This was a bad idea," Ethan gasped, fear sketching his face in pale lines. Clara scanned the room, breathing hard. They had bought themselves mere moments of safety, and the dread in her gut told her the creature wasn't far behind. She looked around, her breath hitching. There were tools, there were crates with names she could barely decipher through the dust. One box caught her eye, red and white lettering that screamed danger. It was an old emergency kit. Her heart raced at the thought of what could be inside. "Stay close, Ethan," she murmured, her voice dropping to a whisper as she inched toward the box. She could hear the shadows slapping against the door, marking their territory, thrumming with impatience. She fumbled with the latch, her fingers trembling. "Mom," Ethan's voice was small, lost in a haze of panic. "What if it finds us?" Clara felt the sharp stab of fear claw at her insides. "It won't," she managed to promise, forcing the lid open to reveal a collection of eerie, dusty items. Flashlights, bandages, and a flare gun. Her fingers closed around it, a flicker of hope igniting within her. It was old, yes, but it could light up the shadows, maybe force the creature back, if only for a moment. "Mom!" Ethan whispered, wide-eyed and terrified, pressing against her leg. A loud crash echoed from behind the door, reverberating through the tight space. The creature had made it through. The air caught in her throat. "Here." She handed the flare gun to Ethan. "When I say so, you pull the trigger, all right? We need to light this place up. What if it doesn't work?" His voice was quivering, the weight of fear threatening to crush his resolve. "It'll work." Clara hoped her words would soothe them both. "It has to." As the door shuddered under the creature's weight, the air thrummed with its malevolence, inviting desperation to seep deeper into her soul. "Mom!" Ethan's eyes were riveted on the door, his body vibrating with fear. Clara felt the light wane in the shard, flickering like a dying star. "Get ready!" she shouted, inching them both back towards the far wall, where the shadows couldn't reach. "On 3. The door splintered, the creature's claws raking against the wood, nails screeching with a sound that made Clara's skin crawl. The very walls seemed to shiver under its presence, and the air became thick, as if they were drowning. 1, 2, 3. "Now!" she commanded, raising her voice over the crashing door. In a trembling grip, Ethan fired the flare gun. The bright burst exploded in the room, illuminating the dark like a gaping wound of light. The creature recoiled, its elongated form flailing, shrieking as the flames poured into the dark. Shadows scurried back, hissing in agony. "Keep firing!" Clara cried, her heart racing. But the light felt fragile, teetering on the edge. Would it be enough? As the creature writhed away from the flare, Clara felt a sense of urgency pull at her. They couldn't stay there, the creature would return. "Ethan, we need to go!" Just as she turned, a chilling laugh rippled through the chaos. "You think the light can save you? You've only delayed the inevitable." She froze, dread slithering down her spine. What did it mean? "Mom, it's coming back." That's not just a shadow. Clara's breath caught, spotting something else emerging from the corners of the room, something more than the creature. As Ethan fired again, brighter than the first, it revealed multiple figures shifting in the shadows, their eyes gleaming with hunger. Was it possible? Is there more than one? Clara gasped, panic settling deeper, the walls closing in. "Get out! Get out!" Ethan shouted, panic rising in his voice as the air crackled with a sinister energy. As they bolted toward the opposite door, the reality hit her hard. Darkness wasn't just a singular entity. They had ignited something far worse. Would the light be enough to fend them off, or were they truly trapped in a nightmare where hope was just another shadow waiting to strike? Through the dread, one question rang in Clara's mind. What if this was only the beginning? They burst through the opposite door, hearts pounding like thunder in their chests. The alley beyond was narrow and claustrophobic, but there was no choice. Clara glanced over her shoulder. The flare sputtered, offering only a flickering hope against the encroaching shadows. "Run!" she shouted, grabbing Ethan's hand tightly. The cold rush of fear pushed them forward as they darted through the dimly lit corridor. The sounds of chaos echoed behind them. The creature's shrieks blended with the whispers of unsettling shadows that seemed to crawl along the walls, half-seen forms trailing their movement. "Where do we go?" Ethan panted, his breath clouding in the chill of the air. "Just keep moving. There must be an exit somewhere," Clara replied, her voice trembling. The memories of their previous haunts flooded back the rusted metal doors, the peeling paint, predatory eyes watching from the dark corners. She fought to ignore the open wounds of her anxiety as they continued weaving through the maze of corridors. Each turn felt more sinister, every flickering light felt like a taunt. Suddenly, Ethan stopped. "Mom, I feel something." His words were barely a whisper, his eyes darting wide, scanning without focus. "What do you mean?" Clara demanded, frustration creeping into her tone. She turned to him, but her question died in her throat when she saw his expression, a mixture of terror and foreboding. In that moment, the air shifted. It was thick, heavy, as if something writhed behind them, breathing down their necks. The corridor twisted into darkness ahead, and Clara felt the shadows gathering, whispering ancient secrets she couldn't understand. "We need to keep going, Ethan." "Mom!" he pleaded again, his voice trembling as if a child could sense a storm before it struck. "Look!" As Clara turned, a figure slunk into view at the corridor's mouth. Sinister and massive, it moved with an unnatural grace, multiple eyes reflecting malevolent intent. Panic surged through Clara, her instincts screaming to flee. She yanked Ethan's arm, pulling him closer, but the looming terror seemed to stretch deeper, filling the space with dread. "Run to that hallway." She pointed to where a slight glow flickered at the end of the passage, the promise of escape amidst the horror. They sprinted, but from the corner of her eye, Clara glimpsed movement, more than one figure, creeping from the shadows. They were not just creatures. They were something darker, an amalgam of fear and whispers, crawling along this nightmare of a labyrinth. "Mom! It's not just one, it's everywhere. Hurry!" Clara screamed, the insistent beat of their footsteps drowning out the noise coming from behind. As they reached the flickering light, her heart pulsed with desperation. It felt like safety, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it might hold the very thing they had tried to escape. Just as they reached the glowing door, a deafening roar erupted from the shadows. A rush of sound and fury that seemed to shake the very foundations of the corridor. Clara braced herself, shoving Ethan ahead just as a mass of darkness surged forward. The door swung open, a breath of warm, tainted air met them. Clara pushed them both through the threshold, tumbling into another room. They landed on cold, hard ground, eyes wide as they took in their new surroundings. It was a laboratory, instruments hinting at long-lost experiments, parchment strewn, strange markings on the walls. "What is this place?" Ethan gasped, recovering from the fall. Clara's heart sank. The unsettling feeling prickled her skin. This wasn't safety. This was merely another trap in the depths of their nightmare. The walls seemed to whisper secrets that pulled at the edge of her mind, filling it with dread. "Mom, look!" Ethan pointed, and her gaze followed. A dark console at the center of the room flickered to life, strange symbols flashing before her eyes, but one caught her attention, a red emblem shaped like the creature they had encountered. Clara felt a chill grip her spine, those symbols breathing a life of their own. Then she heard it, a guttural growl emanating from behind them, the shadows lurking at the door, still hungry, still waiting. "Clara!" "No!" she screamed, as the figures pressed closer, their intent unmistakable. With dread pooling in her stomach, Clara realized they had walked into a much deeper darkness, one that laughed at their feeble attempts to escape. Unbeknownst to them, the real horror was just beginning. What had they awakened here? "Mom, what do we do?" Ethan's voice was small, drowned out by the looming tension. As Clara turned, the consoles around her pulsed ominously, as if the space was full of malignant life. She had a terrifying thought. Were they the subjects of some long-forgotten experiment? "Ethan, we need to get out of here." But the shadows surged in, trapping them, cutting off any chance of retreat. Suddenly, the lab erupted with a blinding light, sending shockwaves through the air. Clara shielded her eyes, heart racing as the figures howled in frustration. What had they unleashed? And how long could they survive? The wall behind the console began to shatter ominously, revealing a deeper abyss of black mist. "Mom!" Ethan's voice trembled with dread. As the fissures widened, Clara knew their fight was just beginning, and it was a battle against something far more sinister than they had ever imagined. What truly waited beyond that wall? The blinding light faded, leaving Clara and Ethan in a world enveloped by shadows. The walls around them, once cold, now pulsed with a malevolent energy, the symbols casting eerie reflections on their frightened faces. Clara's heart raced as fear coiled tighter around her, a dark serpent squeezing the breath out of her chest. "Mom, I can't see!" Ethan cried, his voice rising in panic. She reached out, grasping his arm, willing him to stay close. They had escaped one horror, but what terror loomed before them? The fissures in the wall crumbled further, releasing a swirling mass of black mist. It billowed out like a living thing, tendrils snaking toward them, dripping with otherworldly energy. Clara could feel the coldness radiating from it, chilling her bones. "Whatever this is, we need to move," Clara shouted, her voice strained. She looked toward the only door they had entered through, but the shadows had gathered there, blocking their path like a wall of hungry eyes. Is it getting closer?" Ethan stammered, glancing over his shoulder, fear etched into every feature. "Don't look back. Focus on getting out," Clara urged, her mind racing. There had to be another way out. The lab was littered with strange devices and tables draped in dust-covered sheets. She stepped toward the nearest workbench, instinct driving her. Perhaps there was something there to help them, something that could reverse whatever madness they had awakened. As she rummaged through papers, dark whispers swirled around her, filling her head with fragmented thoughts. They echoed in a cacophony, warning her of dangers she couldn't comprehend. Cursed artifacts, tortured lives, lost souls. She pushed against the thoughts, shoving them aside. "Mom!" Ethan's voice cut through her fog. He was pointing, body rigid with fear. A figure emerged from the mist, weaving through the waves of darkness. It was humanoid, if one could still call it that. Its body twisted unnaturally, limbs elongated, skin shadow-like and glistening. More eyes than life, each one sparking with an insatiable hunger. "Stay back!" Clara shouted, instinctively stepping in front of Ethan. She could feel the creature's gaze boring into them, peeling away their sanity. Without hesitation, Clara grabbed a metal flask from the table, a wild idea forming. "Ethan, I need you to be brave. If anything happens, you run." "But, Mom, no!" "You run, no matter what." She turned her focus on the console. Using the flask, she began smashing buttons, desperate to regain control. Each press summoned more shrieks from the shadows, the ground shaking beneath them. As the creature closed in, Clara caught a glimpse of another door behind the console. Hope ignited inside her, even as the creature approached, its form undulating like a nightmare given flesh. With a final swipe, the console lit up, symbols glowing brighter. Static crackled through the air. She wasn't sure what she had triggered, but it felt like it could either save them or seal their fate. All at once, the ceiling rumbled, the black mist swirling into a howling tempest. Clara grabbed Ethan, pulling him toward the hidden door. The creature lunged, its claws slicing for them, but they dove beneath its grasp as the door swung open. Ethan stumbled through, and Clara followed, barely escaping the monstrous presence that clung to their heels. They shut the door behind them, panting. The new room was dimmer, suffocatingly tight like the alleyways they had fled. It was filled with strange equipment, and more of those horrible symbols, and the air felt charged with unseen energy. "I'm not sure this is any better," Ethan whispered. Fear laced his words. "Neither am I," Clara replied, glancing around them, paranoia creeping back in. "But we can't stay here." As they moved deeper into the room, they stumbled upon a darkened apparatus, pulsating as if it were alive. Clara felt a sinister pull, the shadows creeping around it. "What is this place?" Ethan breathed, moving closer against Clara's grip. "I don't know," she admitted, dread coiling in her stomach again. "But whatever it is, it might just hold all the answers or more nightmares." Instinctively, Clara pressed a small panel on the machine, eliciting a deep groan from its metal sides. The walls began to shift, and for an instant, the symbols flickered to life, bathing them in a sickly glow. Then a voice echoed within the darkness, low and rumbling. "You sought the truth, but the truth is a curse. You entered our domain and now you belong to us." As the air thickened, and shadows writhed. Clara felt the weight of their reality shift. The ground trembled, and she knew the true nightmare was yet to come. What would they unleash next? The revelation lurked in the darkness, waiting. The machine shuddered violently, and Clara braced herself against the wall. Ethan's grip tightened around her arm, knuckles pale in the dim light. The rumbles resembled a deep growl from an unseen beast. The voice that had spoken echoed around them, dripping with malice, warping the very air they breathed. "Belong to us." It was a chant now, reverberating in waves. Clara felt it penetrate her mind, pulling at her consciousness, weaving confusion and fear like shadows budding from the corners of reality. "Ethan, back away from it," she commanded, her heart pounding in her ears. Forcing herself to remain calm, she needed to protect him from whatever it was they had foolishly triggered. The pulsating machine flickered erratically, its surface rippling as though something inside it was stirring. "Mom, I can't," his voice cracked. Fear gripped him, and Clara felt it siphoning away her own strength. She wanted to comfort him, but the tendrils of dread seemed to wrap around her throat, squeezing tight. Suddenly, the room flooded with a harsh light, cutting through the darkness in blinding pulses. Shadows receded into corners, barely held at bay by the glare. Clara squinted, catching sight of symbols dancing frantically on the walls, now formatted into a sickening, spiraling vortex. Ethan gasped. "Look!" He pointed toward the center of the machine. There, a dark shape began to manifest, an outline of something meant to be hidden, unearthed from the depths of their nightmares. Clara stared, caught between terror and morbid fascination as it solidified. It was a disk, spinning slowly as if surfacing from a dream, sleek and coiled with mist. She remembered the stories, the legends she had heard about ancient spacecraft, whispers of beings visiting from other realms and the horrors lurking just beyond human understanding. But this was different. "It can't be real," Clara muttered, shaking her head. The chill was creeping back into her bones, sharper than before. The machine emitted a low hum, synchronizing with her racing heartbeat. "Mom!" Ethan's voice sliced through her dread. He was trembling, eyes wide, reflecting the menacing glow of the ship. "What does it want?" The question hung painfully in the air. Clara wanted to protect her son, to shield him from the insanity threatening to envelop them. "I don't know!" she cried, desperation seeping into her words as the pulsating energy rang louder. A sharp crack echoed. The ground quaked beneath their feet as a fissure opened, sending dark mist gushing out like a flood. Clara steeled herself against its incoming tide, clutching Ethan tightly. They could not allow whatever lay within that darkness to breach their reality. "Fight it! Don't let it in!" Clara shouted, but the fear was seeping back into her mind, wrapping around her thoughts. The low rumble grew louder, as if the machine was calling out for something. Or someone. Flashes of visions invaded Clara's mind. Brief glimpses of gaping voids, lost souls being absorbed, whispers begging for release. As she thrust her will against the invading thoughts, the bright lights dimmed, replaced by a more sinister glow. The shapes forming from mist twisted into ghastly faces, wrapping around her like a tangible blanket, pressing inward, demanding consciousness. "No! You will not take him!" she shrieked, pushing forward, determined to protect Ethan at all costs. The shadows pulsed in response, surging toward them with renewed vigor. The room spun violently around them, the walls warping, pulling in close like a constricting snake. Shadows landed sharp claws on her mind, dragging at her resolve. Just as the weight of despair threatened to crush her, she gripped Ethan's shoulders. "We need to focus. We need to find a way to stop this." In that moment of desperation, the machine let out an ear-splitting screech. Clara's vision blurred as a beam of light shot from its center, illuminating the darkest corners of the room. What appeared was no longer a mere artifact, but a portal, a gateway woven from the very essence of the shadows. From within it, figures emerged. Cloaked in darkness, eyes shining with malice, stretching their limbs toward the light, seeking escape. "Run!" Clara shouted, yanking Ethan toward the back of the room. The shadow creatures' reach grew longer, their voices now a chaotic rumble of anger and hunger. Ethan pulled back, fear racking his frail body. What is happening? He trembled. Something wants to get through. We can't let them take us. Clara's heart raced in panic. They were on the precipice of a reality that should never exist. And at that moment, she realized that this was only the beginning. Whatever truths they uncovered would drag them deeper into an abyss they might never escape. Stay close. We have to find another exit. But the shining portal beckoned, calling them into the darkness beyond. Clara could feel the pull, the temptation of knowledge ahead. What lay hidden could either save them or destroy every shred of their souls. Just as they turned to escape, a piercing scream ripped through the chaos, an agonizing cry of despair that echoed through the very fabric of the room, freezing them in place. Ethan, do you hear that? The scream had come from somewhere deep within the machine. It resonated like a death knell, promising nothing but doom. What if? Ethan whispered, eyes wide with fear. Trapped by shadows and the promise of the unknown, Clara realized then, with brutal clarity, they were not just fleeing the darkness, they were being drawn into it. And what awaited them was worse than their nightmares. Could they ever truly escape? Would they emerge or become part of the haunting symphony that echoed in the darkness? Questions spiraled like the shadows around them. The true terror was yet to come. The ground shook, and the room plunged deeper into chaos as the portal writhed, refusing to relent. Clara's heart pounded. There was no more time for choices, they were out of options. The shadows surged forward, relentless and furious, hungry for their despair. Ethan, we can't let it take us! Clara shouted, pulling her son closer, the warmth of him against her chest grounding her. Did she dare to step into the unknown? But something sparked inside her, a fierce will to protect, to fight against the tide wanting to drown them. Light flickered weakly around them, and yet deep within her, the fire of determination ignited. With resolve coursing through her, she edged closer to the pulsating machine, its glow beckoning with a sinister promise. What do you want from us? She screamed, the echoes bouncing off the walls, desperation bleeding her voice. What we want, it growled, distorting each word, stretching them like taffy in her mind, is your essence, your truth will set us free. Clara's breast shuddered, her spine curling in torment. Truth? What truth could possibly satisfy such darkness? A flash of memory surged, a painful moment, choices laden with regret. Mom, Ethan's small voice trembled, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart, she whispered, kneeling to meet his worried gaze. But we're stronger than this. Then a new thought struck her. They had faced the creature together. They had cast light against darkness. Perhaps that was their only weapon. Clenching Ethan's hand, Clara turned, her next words rising like a battle cry. Together, we will shine. The machine shuddered again, as shadows writhed in fury at her declaration. Clara took a deep breath. Whatever it is that you think you can take from us, you can't. We won't let you. With that, she pressed her other hand onto the machine's surface. Release us, Ethan echoed, his voice gaining strength. Let my mom and me go. Light erupted from beneath their hands, spilling forth like molten gold, illuminating the room in brilliant flames. It wasn't just fear that pushed the shadows back, it was the powerful tether between them, love, hope, resilience. Clara felt the pulsing energy surge, coursing into the machine, running like electricity through her veins. The malevolent figures on the threshold hesitated, recoiling at the light, their forms dissolving into tortured whispers. I believe in us. We will not fall to you, she roared, pushing harder. The room exploded, blinding light engulfing the darkness, unraveling the horrifying specters within like wisps of smoke in an angry gust. Ethan squeezed her hand tighter, a radiant glow washing over them, the walls vibrating with promise. For the first time, the shadows shrieked, they twisted and begged, terror seeping into their cries. You can't escape. But Clara felt the fear turn and twist in her gut, morphing into sheer determination. We choose life, she shouted, amplifying their combined strength, shrinking the shadows back into nothing as the light enveloped them both completely. I love you, Mom, Ethan said, his small voice resonating with truth as they stood united, resolute against the insidious chaos. and I love you, Ethan. Always, she replied, the words binding them closer, larger than their dread. In a final moment of fury, Clara pushed out the light, her voice cutting through the din. We are free! The shadows shrieked one last time before dissolving entirely, unraveling into silence. The air vibrated, the portal's entity drawn back, wailing and twisting into the darkness tinged with despair. For a brief, shining moment, it felt as if eternity hung in the balance, a space between breaths. Then soft echoes of laughter broke the silence, warm and reassuring. Colors returned to the room, warmth seeping back into the edges of existence. The portal had shrunk, flickering before them one last time, leaving a lingering glow that illuminated the path forward rather than a way to dive into the abyss. Is it over? Ethan trembled, letting go of her hand but pressing close. Clara knelt, hugging him tightly, her heart still racing. I think it is for now. She looked around the room. This dark experiment had become nothing more than a memory of their shared strength, a scar that served to remind them of their victory. Silence reigned as they stepped further into the warm, embraced light of safety. Clara knew the fight against darkness wasn't truly over. They had merely won a powerful battle today. But they had also emerged, changed, renewed, a bit bruised but still whole. Let us get out of this place, Clara said, her voice a blend of relief and urgency. Together they stepped forward, hand in hand, ready to leave the remnants of haunted memories behind. Every step felt lighter, a weight lifting as they made their way toward the door leading out of their labyrinth of fear. As they emerged into the daylight, Clara turned back one last time. We faced the shadows and we made it. Ethan grinned up at her, triumph shining in his eyes. Together. Yes, together. They walked forward into brighter futures, knowing now that their light could drive back even the strongest darkness. Thank you all for joining Clara and Ethan on this terrifying journey. Don't forget to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive tales. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Only true fans understand the importance of backing our channel. Don't wait even one more second to share.